I'm going to talk about why Dylan McCaffrey and Zac Charbonnet transferred out of Michigan right after the bumper. Hello and welcome to Intermittent Sports, the channel where we cover these Michigan Wolverines, the Detroit Lions, Detroit Tigers, and Detroit Pistons. So if you're a fan of 1, 2, 3, or all 4 of those teams, go ahead and subscribe right here, hit that bell notification so you don't miss any of the Michigan action. So both Dylan and Zac have named their destinations post-winged helmets. Dylan is headed to Northern Colorado, and Zac is headed to UCLA. Let's talk about why they were all but forced into these decisions, starting with Charbonnet. In 2019, Zac Charbonnet against the Army Black Knights had 30 carries for 100 yards and 3 touchdowns. And the Wolverines needed every single one of those tough yards in order to beat Army 24-21 in 2 overtimes. 30 carries. But do you know how many carries Zac Charbonnet had in all of 2020? Any guesses? The answer is 19. 19 carries in a pathetic 2-4 season. Now Michigan under Jim Harbaugh is a lot like the Detroit Lions in the fact that they're not big on a featured every down running back, despite the fact that they have been able to get featured every down running back talent. While the average Michigan fan might say that the 4 and 5 stars that we've gotten in the past just didn't live up to their hype, is it really feasible to say that every single one of those 4 and 5 star guys were not legitimate? It's quite possible that Jim Harbaugh misused some of those guys and they never lived up to their potential because of that. A running back, like a lot of positions in football and like a lot of positions in sports in general, needs repetition, needs practice, needs comfortability, and needs confidence. It'd be fair to say that Zac was never provided any of that, and thus he's now out the door. Now, in Jim Harbaugh's defense, that running back group was absolutely stacked. You had Hassan Haskins, Blake Corum, obviously Zac Charbonnet, and Chris Evans upon his return. So if you're a fan of rotating running backs in and having the freshest possible legs at all time, then you probably agree wholeheartedly with Jim Harbaugh's decisions. I, on the other hand, do think you need to utilize all the talent that you have on that roster in the running back group, but you need to have a main hoss. For me last season, that guy was either Hassan Haskins or Blake Corum. I would start with Hassan Haskins, and a lot of times he was that guy, but for some reason, Harbaugh would take him out when he was just hitting his stride, and he'd replace them with people who just weren't seeing the holes quite as well and weren't in the real rhythm of the game because they hadn't been in the game much, like Charbonnet. Now you have 5-star running back Donovan Edwards coming in, and that obviously was the last straw for Zac. He now heads to Los Angeles like our boy Matthew Stafford, as well as ex-Michigan Wolverines like Devin Asiasi, Jedd Fisch, and Wilton Speight, and in a way DTR Dorian Thompson-Robinson, who was in the running to go to Michigan. And I'm happy for Zac Charbonnet because he's likely to have a lot more opportunities in LA than he did in Ann Arbor. Really, this is kind of the case where you can't blame either guy. You can't fully place the blame on Jim Harbaugh because he was just utilizing all the talent that he had, and you can't blame him because Hassan Haskins was a 3-star recruit out of high school who ended up probably being our best running back in the group last season. So not only have they recruited top-notch talent at that position, they've also had guys like Haskins or Higdon who were better than what scouts thought they were. And as such, you can't blame Charbonnet for saying, I think I'll try my luck elsewhere. I'm hoping that this will be mutually beneficial for both sides, and I imagine that Zac Charbonnet could see bigger holes to run through against Pac-12 defenses and with a much more experienced offensive line. Then you have Dylan McCaffrey, who transferred to Northern Colorado to play with his dad, Ed McCaffrey. And this move definitely has me scratching my head. On the one hand, who's gonna know better than how to display your talents than your own father? But on the other hand, I'm imagining that Dylan McCaffrey's goal ultimately is to play in the NFL, or at least I imagine that to be the case. Now don't get me wrong, you can go to the NFL out of Northern Colorado and you can be scouted by NFL scouts. But I can't help but to think that if he puts up big numbers at Northern Colorado, a lot of the NFL teams are gonna be worried about taking a risk on him in the future because those stats are against weaker competition. That has to factor in to some degree. But I guess having a star NFL athlete as your father and a star NFL athlete as your brother doesn't hurt the case. At this point, it's kind of in the genes. Now, me personally, I would have liked to have seen Dylan McCaffrey transfer to any of the Power 5 conferences outside of the Big Ten or the SEC. More specifically in this order: Pac-12 at 3, ACC at 2, and the place that I would have liked to see him the most is the Big 12 Conference. Why? Because the Big 12 Conference, while getting a little bit better, is not that great at stopping the pass, or just playing defense in general. But hey, he's still young. I'm gonna let the man live and make his own decisions. It's his life. This transfer does beg the question though, why did Dylan McCaffrey wait so long to enter the transfer portal? The very possible answer? He likely wanted to be sure that both of his feet were out the door before he burned that bridge that was Ann Arbor. With Joe Milton struggling mightily in 2020, and with Cade McNamara looking pretty decent but still relatively raw, and I know you you obviously have 5-star recruit out of IMG Academy, JJ McCarthy coming in, but he's young. Don't forget that. Harbaugh likes his experience, guys. McCaffrey may have taken a second look at that quarterback room and said, I wonder if I still have a shot here. A shot over Joe Milton because he's better than Joe Milton. A shot over Cade McNamara because he has more experience than Cade and probably on paper is also better. And a shot over McCarthy because of McCarthy's youth. So in my opinion, there is a real chance that Dillon McCaffrey and Jim Harbaugh may have had one last sit down to say, is this the absolute right decision moving forward? And either one or both of them decided, yes, it was time to turn the page and go to the next chapter. Also, Dillon McCaffrey has to feel a little bit slighted by Michigan. No? I mean, obviously hindsight is 20/20, but he was clearly above and beyond anything Joe Milton showed us last season outside of maybe the Minnesota performance, which even after that performance, I was like, yo, he's just dinking and dunking balls. There weren't any real impressive throws downfield. Chill out. For me, the only logical reason as to why Jim Harbaugh chose Joe Milton over Dillon McCaffrey has to be because he wanted to stir things up, mix things up, in what he may have seen as one of his last possible seasons at the University of Michigan if he didn't get things done. And he didn't want to go the conventional route with Dillon McCaffrey. He wanted to try to take a risk with Joe Milton. That's the only thing that would make sense. Because if you saw what we saw in all of 2020, you're like, why did he win the starting job over Dillon again? And I know there's other rumors and stuff floating about. Who knows? So that's why I and many others believe that Zac Charbonnet and Dillon McCaffrey transferred out of Michigan this offseason. Simply put, they weren't getting enough reps where they were at, and they wanted to go elsewhere so they could shine. They wanted to be the guy somewhere else. Best of luck to both of them in their future seasons, and hopefully we have enough depth to make up for the losses of these guys and others who have transferred along the way. Next Monday at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, it's going to be the release, finally, of the downfall of Michigan football, the Jim Harbaugh era. That so far 3-part series has gotten us 65,000 collective views, so we can't thank you guys enough. Then on Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we're going to be a little bit more optimistic with the rise of Michigan basketball, how John Beilein and Juwan Howard helped their team to get the Fab 5 swagger back. And lastly, on Thursday, we've been without Michigan basketball for far too long. We're going to be streaming the game live should it take place. And for the love of God, please let it take place. Because if we're being honest, if we're looking at all these teams on that wall right there, Michigan basketball is all we got. We'll see you guys then. Go ahead and give this video a like if you remember Tom Brady's epic game in the 2000 Orange Bowl against the Alabama Crimson Tide. Have a great one, guys, and go blue.